Will Barclay, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Let's go back to beginnings. You were born in Phoenix.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, and then, as I understand it, you moved then to Los Angeles when you were what, about 5 years old?
I was 4, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
What
very young.
what do you remember about that trip?
Well, yeah, we drove out in my father's Model A, and it had a soft top, a cloth top. The whole trip, I was in the back seat, and I was like this with my fingers in my ears because that cloth top vibrated so terribly. I couldn't stand it.
They didn't
So-
put the top down, though, huh?
No, it was, I guess for our safety or something like that, that if there was an accident, I'd get thrown a little bit more slowly out of the car.
And
We didn't have seat belts, of course.
and then you wouldn't be here tonight. All right.
I wouldn't.
So, growing up, you between Phoenix, I guess your formative years were really in Southern California.
Oh, they were for sure. Yeah.
What kind of things did you do as a kid?
Played in the backyard a lot. I built pretend ocean vehicles, with sails and things like that. And I was pretty involved in making things, and of course I have been all my life. But
Sure.
yeah, I did sails and played with various articles that my dad and I brought back from ghost towns in Southern California. We did a lot of traveling, he and I, looking at old ghost towns. So that's a major thing I did as a kid. Shot guns when I was a little boy. It was fun.
When did music become part of your life?
Yeah, well, rather late. Aside from singing, I was always called to be in the choruses at my elementary school. Yeah, in fact, one time, the choral teacher came into the building and where we were, and she just had me sing one note, and then, you're in. 'Cause I had a pretty good voice back at the time, and I could carry a tune.
A short audition. Huh?
Yeah, it was a very short audition. So that was a fun.
I read a quote from you that every place that I've been has its own quality. So
Yeah.
what quality do you recall about growing up in Los Angeles?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, it's a quality that really isn't there anymore because it's so built up. But the place was half rural when I was growing there. And there was always some wild place that I could walk to when I was growing up there. And I really liked that more than anything. That's one of the things I like about here is that it's still very wild. So, there was a place, I was actually in Torrance, not actually in Los Angeles. Right next to it was this place that was pretty sylvan called Palos Verdes, Green Sticks. So I would walk there. It was about a half an hour walk. And in the summertime, I could go there all day, and my parents didn't worry about me. Later on, a major activity was skin diving. I really loved skin diving because to me, it was like a different world under there. And it is. I mean, literally, it is a different world with everything, all kinds of creatures that I didn't even know what they were, but it was fascinating to see them.
Your grandfather was Arthur Cheffin.
Yeah, well, actually, my step-grandfather.
Okay. What kind of wisdom do you recall, or wisdom or motivations do you remember from him?
Okay, one of the hardest things was that I was a boy and he had very small feet. I didn't realize this. So he bet me $5 that he could put my boots on. Of course, I figured he's a grown man and I'm this little kid. And he took me for $5. And he took the money. And so one of the best things I got from him is watch out, for swindlers, basically. It set me up well for living with travelers, I tell you.
And we'll talk about travelers too.
Later on.
Was Wild Bill Hickman somewhat of a part of your life?
Not really a part of my life. He was, heard stories about him from my grandmother, saying that everything that's in those books was not true. She didn't believe any of those stories. I believe probably half of them, but he was, a direct ancestor of mine. He's a great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather. He was my grandfather who moved here, his grandfather. So whatever that makes him.
Very great.
He was infamously great, yeah.
Well, you've been pretty much a fixture here since, 1988, when you came to do some repairs and then stayed?
I think it was 89.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if I'm right about the dates. It's so long ago. My memory is... Jenny, can you tell us?
It's
88 or 89, I forgot.
88.
Okay. We're close. Good. And a lot's changed here since then.
Yeah.
Good, bad, indifferent.
Poof. A lot more outsiders moved in, and I basically am an outsider. I mean, I'm an outsider everywhere I go because I'm just different. Mm-hmm. Family's different. Way of looking at things is different. I've always felt as though I was an outsider. But, more people moving in here, like most of you all are move-ins, I think. And I'm more comfortable with that, but I'm not real comfortable with every spare lot being occupied by a house like it is nowadays. It used to be like wild and open. There was no houses at all, up the hill from my house when I came here. And I remember going there, when I was a little kid, walking up there, and there was nothing at all. There wasn't as many trees in those days. It was quite a wide vista. You could see everywhere. All of those pinyon trees were small when I was little.
So you've watched them mature as well.
I have, yeah.
You spent some time with Native Americans. Talk about that a little bit. How did that come about?
I did. Well, see, in fact, while he was still alive, a guy named Craig Carpenter, he was the one person besides my own family that I had known longer than anybody else. And how he came to be known by us was that when Art Chaffin and my grandmother, Della, were running the Chaffin Ferry across the Colorado, he came there to work for them. He ran the tractor. As the river goes up and down, the bank would always move. It would get washed away. So nearly every day, the river would go up and down daily. He would work on getting that ramp there ready for the traffic. He did all kinds of work around the place. He, for some reason, really admired my grandparents. He said that Art Chaffin was the one person that he knew that knew more about the outdoors and how to survive in the outdoors than anybody else he'd ever met. So he admired him for that, and he figured that he learned a lot from Arthur Chaffin. And when my parents and I were living in Torrance, Arthur and Della would come to visit us every Christmas. And so every Christmas, Craig would come and visit us there at the house, ever since I was yay high. And, he would tell us stories about Indian stuff that he did, and he was what he called a messenger for Thomas Banachia, who was trying to spread what they called the Hopi message of peace back in those days. And they wanted that spread as far and wide as they possibly could. So Craig Carpenter would help with logistics of that kind of stuff and very often drive him around, from place to place. To Indian reservations, mainly.
What was your takeaway from those kinds of experiences?
Well, Craig impressed me deeply. He really did. Whenever he came there, he came dressed in his full Navajo regalia, even though he was a Mohawk Indian. He had spent a lot of years amongst the Navajos and became sort of accepted by him. And, they gave him a name in Navajo, which means green car. I don't know what it is in Navajo, but he always drove a green car, so they called him Green Car.
Was some of that an influence? You have a great interest in Native American plants and vegetables and whatnot.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's mainly down to him. Yeah, he kind of took me under his wing after a while. I stayed with him and his wife at the Hupa Indian Reservation. Mm-hmm. And, I spent off and on over many years, like a couple of months here, a couple of months there, and just stayed with him, helping out where I could with the garden, and learned about how to do furrow irrigation from him, plus an awful lot of Indian stuff. That, unfortunately, most of it I can't talk about because when you are entrusted with that kind of stuff, I'm kind of sworn to secrecy. Some things I can talk about, but nothing really very specific. They did take me on a pilgrimage, which it's okay to talk about because they did. They took, I don't know if you're familiar with the author Peter Matheson. They took him all over the place, talking to Indian leaders. And the funny thing about that is with Craig, there had to be some reason. He was of the belief that that coyotes, they are going to mark you in some way as a spokesman if you are going to be a spokesman. And Craig wouldn't tell Peter Matheson anything until Peter Matheson mentioned the story, and Craig has told me this. I never met Peter Matheson, although he's been to my house when I wasn't there.
That sounds like another story.
Yeah. But, so Peter Matheson was out camping one time, and a coyote came into his tent, and out of all the stuff that was there, he stole his toothbrush and chewed on the toothbrush. And then Peter Matheson didn't have any choice but to still continue to brush his teeth, but he got bloody from the chewed up toothbrush. Mm-hmm. And so Craig figured that meant that the coyote had marked him and given him what he called coyote power, the power to be enabled to tell traditional stories. Mm-hmm. So Craig, in a book called Indian Country by Peter Matheson, he tells a bunch of those stories. One of the stories is going to Dr. Rock. And because it's in that story, I can tell you that they also took me on a pilgrimage to Dr. Rock. And it was, I can't really say anything more other than a song that I wrote about it, which I think I may have already recorded at some point.
Why is it called Dr. Rock? Or is that...
Because, well, that's what it's called in English. It's got some name in, I think it's the name that means the upriver people. Okay. I forget their name offhand, their native name. Okay. But that's basically what it translates to. It's a rock that people would go to ask for being healed by things. And it's also a rock that native shamans would go to in order to get their power. Okay. Not that I ever asked for that. I think it's even in the song that I didn't ask for anything when I went there, although in my head I also heard this voice, presumably from there. It was a pretty high experience. saying that I could have whatever I wanted, or whatever I asked for, it would be granted. But I'd heard enough Native stories about how it's not very smart to ask for something that you think you want or think that you need. So instead, I said, I will accept whatever you wish to give to me, whatever you think I should have. And I think that was probably one of the smartest decisions I ever made. Mm-hmm. Because people are stupid, you know. They think they know what they should have. They really don't. And it was granted. And that was self-confidence and I suppose the ability to not be swayed by other people's opinions of me. And that has served me well throughout my entire life, I've got to say.
You've mentioned family a couple times. Talk about your family a bit.
Distant family, my present family. I love my grandkids and my kids like you wouldn't believe. It's like Glenn Wasson, who was the sweat lodge leader in Susanville, told me that the purpose of life, as far as Indians are concerned, is to have kids. In fact, I think that has a much wider meaning in that by having kids, it makes you responsible. You know, so you should try to have kids, is what he was saying. Plus, having kids means our species can continue. So I took that to heart. And I'm so glad that I had children. You know,
you have a lot of your family here tonight.
Yeah, they are here.
As well as your extended family.
I love them so deeply.
Yeah.
And so that is the main thing, yeah. And my family, further back, we mentioned Arth and Della Chaffin. On the other side there, my father was born in Des Moines, Iowa. Lived most of his life in Michigan. My mother was born in the next town up, in Bicknell. Actually, in the stone house that is now where the Sunglow Cafe is. There used to be a stone house there, and that's where she was born. So, you know, that side of my family, my mother's side of the family, has been here since white people have come here. All of them. Well, no, I guess my grandfather came from Milford. He came with his dad, who actually was made bishop of the Torrey church. That little church is down there. And they told me that he was sent down here to try to convert the heathens. That's what Dick Pace told me. Because back in the day, everybody who lived in Torrey was considered to be heathen because they weren't as church-going as the people of Loa and people on that side of the gap. You know, everybody down here had to be like converted to the church and things like that. And in fact, my grandfather Arth, he was never baptized. He just wouldn't do it. So stubborn fella. But on my dad's side, his parents came from Aberdeen, Scotland. And the whole line of people are from back there.
So you have Scottish blood.
Yeah, in fact, I took a DNA test, and it said like 98% Scottish, and that's coming from both sides. But yeah, so I'm pretty darn Scottish.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Chickens. Talk about chickens.
Well, I've kept chickens for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And the line of chickens that I had that I'm almost prepared to give up at this point because it's just too much work. But they were chickens that were local chickens from the Susanville area that people had given to Craig when I lived there. He gave me a dozen eggs, and I put them under a chicken that I already had, and they all hatched out. And those eggs that Craig had were from all those local pioneer chickens. So I call them
Different breeds.
Honey Lake chickens.
Honey leg?
Honey Lake.
Lake. I see.
Yeah, that's a lake that's around there, around Susanville.
We'll talk about music in a bit, but you're a jack of all trades. You've done just a little bit of everything. But one of the things that you're really known for is your stone work. Mm-hmm. How did you get involved in that?
Yeah, well, my dad was always laying bricks, around our house. He learned how to lay bricks from his father, who was a lithographer, which is a guy who does etchings in stone. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know what a lithographer is. But, he was also a man who could do many things. And so he taught my dad how to lay bricks. So I learned how to lay bricks from him. But I learned how to lay stone from the father of a woman that I worked for in Navan, County Meath. She sent me over to meet her father just because she thought that I would like to meet her father and her father would like to meet me. He was very good at building walls, and so he took dry stone walls apart and showed me how they go back together, and then let me try to take my hand at it to see if I could figure it out. And that started an interest in stone walls. That and flagstones and all kinds of things that I've always loved doing. I always liked the permanence of stone. You build in wood, you make stuff out of paper mache, it's soon gone. But stone, it feels like you're building for forever. So I felt like I was making a purpose, a difference.
Any projects in the area that you're particularly proud of?
Well, down at the Tooth Ranch, I built that wall, and that's one that I'm proud of. And I particularly like the flat work over at Don House's house. Andrew and I did that flat work there, and I think I hope you think so too, Andrew. I think it's some of our best work.
It is nice.
So I'm proud of those two.
Let's talk music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something I know nothing about.
Hardly. Growing up with all the musical influences in Southern California, was that significant for you?
It made a big difference. Yeah, I was singing, and boy, I loved the Beatles. I wore their Sgt. Pepper's album to death. It doesn't even play anymore because I just played that over and over and over and learned every note, every word, everything about it. That just seemed to be the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. They always thought, that their big rivals were the Beach Boys. And I've got to admit, Pet Songs is a good album, but boy, it didn't get me like the Beatles album did. So, yeah, I loved them, but the next thing that came along was when Sweethearts of the Rodeo came out. That set my mind on a different planet. I can righteously say that it blew my mind. And I love it to this day. I love the songs and the genius. I'm sorry he died so young, but he did. But
Graham Parsons.
Yeah, Graham Parsons I'm talking about. He was a great loss to music in general.
Well, when did you start picking up instruments?
Oh, first thing I picked up was in late elementary school, harmonica. And then I got in a band playing harmonica. And my parents wouldn't buy me a guitar. Like a lot of parents, they thought that this was something, that would never make any money. And to this day, it has not really made any money. So they were right about that. But still, I was determined to learn how to play. So I made my own guitar, probably the worst guitar ever made. A box with a stick, didn't have any frets, so I had dowels, and some old guitar strings that I found somewhere. So it had actual guitar strings, but, that was pretty pathetic. Finally, my older sister bought me a nylon string guitar that I still have. And that's when I started actually learning how to play a normal guitar. So I spent way too many hours at it, according to my parents, and learned how to play as quickly as I could. Late elementary school and into high school, I was playing that.
But you also play banjo and fiddle and the tin pipe.
Yeah, I got those later. But yeah, the thing I started off with was harmonica first and guitar. And being able to play those, got me into bands. And that was always fun. I love playing with other people. It doubles the fun if you're playing with somebody else. By yourself, you're just practicing. It's not really music until you're playing in front of people or with other people. Some of the most funnest times I've ever had.
Now, you traveled with some Irish musicians, the Travelers. How did that come about? And how old were you at that point?
Well, it was 75 that I went over there, so how old would I have been in 75?
Well, you would have been about 22.
Yeah. Yeah, about 22 then. Yeah, I think I just turned 22 because I went over there in the spring. Flew over with some money that my Scottish grandmother had left to me. That bought the ticket. But then I was busking the whole time I was over there too, so I had to stretch that money as far as it could go. Yeah, it was basically my ticket there and back. But, you see, part of the thing that Craig had was that he wanted me, when I was over there, to try to find the most original people that I could and tell them about the Hopi message of peace, which I had pretty much memorized by that time. So I was traveling around and I saw these Irish travelers there. And I went over and talked to the major guy, Luke McGuire. He was the elder of the clan that was strewn up and down the street. Cement Road, they called it, in Drogheda. Right over the border from the north. Started talking about this, and Craig had told me to look for the people that still talk to the lightning and the rain and the earth. And so I asked Luke, do your people still talk to the lightning or the rain and the earth? And then he said, well, I don't know about the lightning and the rain, but we still talk to the people of the earth, the people under the earth. And he was talking about the people that the rest of Irish call fairies, that they think live under the earth and in those earthen mounds that are burial mounds of the first agricultural people who came to Ireland. So, talked to him a little bit, about the thing. He didn't really show a whole lot of interest. But then the next time I came by, he invited me to live there with him. He found a place for me to pitch my tent, on the street, between two of his sons. And from then on, they just kind of took me in. I think in retrospect, it's because they are a people in Ireland who are considered by everybody else in Ireland to be the lowest of the low. they're considered to be lower than dirt socially. And I may have been one of the few people that came along and didn't treat them like dirt. I treated them like human beings, which of course they are, but they didn't often get treated that way. So I think that's why they took me in and were willing to have me around.
So besides music, clearly you learned some life issues as well.
Yeah, I loved living like a traveler, to tell you the truth. I got a wagon and I had horses after a while. I mean, the McGuires got me a car at first, but then I decided I'd rather go around with horses and learn about horses. And had to get all the tack and all the equipment to go along with it. But I loved going that slow pace, and I loved, the trot of the horse. The speed of a horse's trot is like a jig. That is what determines the whole rhythm, and the speed is the speed of a horse trotting. The speed of a horse walking, that's the speed that they dance to. That is the speed of a reel. And until I was with those horses, I had no idea of that. But after I was there with the horses, then like the little bell went off in here, and realized that horses are, my gosh, we've lived with horses for thousands of years. We've lived with cars for, 60, maybe, probably 100. But they've been around. We are so much more in our hearts and our stomachs connected to horses than we are with motors. So to me, it was a joy to get back to living with a horse, connecting with a horse. It really seemed to bring me into more of a human being than I was before. I figure, those horses taught me really a whole lot, as well as the travelers, about how to live and how to be, and how to sit around with your family around the fire every night. One of the funny things that the settled people in Ireland complain about is that the travelers, when they move into a house, as they're being forced to do nowadays, they're always having barbecues in the backyard. They figure you can't have a fire in the backyard without it being a barbecue. Mm-hmm. Well, they may cook food over it, and they may not, but most likely it's being cooked in the house. All they're doing is sitting around a fire because it's a wonderful thing to do. And to tell you the truth, when I came back to my parents' house after I was called back from Ireland for family issues, I could not stand being in the house. I couldn't sleep in the house. I was fidgety. I had to camp in the backyard. For 6 weeks, I couldn't enter the house. I just had to be back there in the backyard with a fire, just because that felt what was normal.
So certain simplicity and tradition.
Yeah, simplicity and tradition. Although many aspects of living on the road are not simple. I realized that, having a phone and dishwashers and things like that makes life simple here. But when you have to do everything for yourself out on the road, then a lot of times it's not simple. But it seems so very much more peaceful. That's the real difference. Whether it's simple or complex, the overall thing is that when you're outside all the time and living on the road, it's a very peaceful existence. And that's what I love most of all, a really deep sense of peace.
We chatted in advance of this, and you talked about the Scottish language and the changes there. And this guitar is not a prop up here. He's actually going to play. So explain a little bit about the language first, Will, and then
Yeah, I'd said about, well, I don't know if it was in the talk or if I just told you that when we were growing up, my Scottish grandmother, she lived in the area, and she was over at our house all the time, and she spoke Scots, as they call it, which is not English apparently, but we all learned to understand it. She could understand us speaking English. I mean, she had to go to school and learn English when she was there. But Scots was her native tongue, and that is a language which grew alongside of English out of Anglo-Saxon. So it's probably more Anglo-Saxon than English is, for sure. But it's a different way of speaking, and I've learned recently that it's considered an endangered language. It's only, I think, 10 years ago that Scots has been allowed to have been taught in schools. It was forbidden before that. So naturally, it was something that was dying out. Certainly not a language of prestige. It's considered a farmer's language or something like that. But around the turn of last century, when my grandmother was in Aberdeen growing up, well, no, she was growing up earlier than that. She was a young woman by the turn of the century. Anyway, that's what everybody spoke, and that's what she speaks naturally. Spoke naturally. She's been dead many years now. But there was a time, I didn't really think much of it, and I came across this tune as I was looking for another tune. I heard this version of a tune by a woman named Iona Fife. And boy, when she started singing this tune, which is called The Swan Swims, which I'm not singing tonight, it's a really gruesome song that originally came from Scandinavia. I like murder ballads, as everybody probably knows, and I thought it was wonderful to come across the worst murder ballad anybody has ever written. They won't even let me sing it in English.
Will, tell us about the song you're going to do for us.
So before
Okay.
Iona Fife, when she sang this song, it blew my mind because I could hear, it sounded as though my grandmother was singing, and I didn't realize, and in looking into Scots, I realized it was something that was rare and important. Okay, I'm going to sing a song that's called Macpherson's Lament or Macpherson's Rant. He was also a gypsy. He was born to, I found this from the Macpherson Family Museum website, that Macpherson, his father was a lord, his mother was a gypsy. He kept him at his house, at his father's house, until his father died, and then the actual heir to his father's position kicked the young Macpherson out, the gypsy boy. He was kicked out. So he went to live with his mother's family. He was welcomed in, of course. And eventually he had this band of gypsy cattle stealers, although lords did it all the time. That's how they got into fights with each other. So it was kind of a situation where it seemed like it was somewhat okay to do, unless you were caught by your opposing side. And he was very flamboyant. He even, whenever he marched into a market town where he was going to sell his cows, he had his piper lead the way into the town. He had his own bagpiper. He styled himself very well, and he was quite a wealthy man, what with all the stealing and whatnot. But anyway, this song is in Scots, and it's a song that purportedly he he wrote the melody to on the night before he was hanged. And he was hanged by, like I said, one of the people that didn't like the fact that McPherson was always taking his cows. Okay, there's many Scots words in here that I hope you will remember as I rattle them off. Farewell means farewell. Strang means strong. Te means two. Wheel means will. Lang means long. Yonder, well, that's practically English. Okay, death is death. Breath is breath. Depart means depart. Fiddle is fiddle. Middle is middle. Therefore they rhyme. Stain is stone. Gain is gone. Deed is dead. Common is coming. Han is hand. And fray means from. Okay. Te is a word like that. But the word important in the chorus, the word say means so. Gade means pretty much went, going somewhere. Gain. Arun means around. Okay, there's three words in the chorus that are important. They're not anything like English. Well, I guess the last one is. Ronton is a quality that is attributed to him. And that means that it's really in your face, like right up there, not cowed by anything. Daunton means defiant, like he just doesn't take crap from anybody. Wanton means obeying no rules, which why in English they call, well, English, when somebody is a wanton woman, it means she's not obeying society's rules. But it also has the meaning of being wild. So, say wantonly, so wantonly, so wantonly, so dauntingly gayed he, which means he went around acting like that. So it doesn't mean like that you're supposed to say wantonly, like speak it. It doesn't mean that at all. Okay, even though you probably forgot everything, I'm going to sing this song anyway. And he is said to have made this melody up. He was a famous fiddler. So he wrote this tune, didn't write the words, other people wrote the words about him, but he played this tune, and then, according to the family website, he offered his fiddle to anybody who could play the tune that he had just played while he was next to the gallows. Nobody could do it, and so he broke his fiddle. He smashed it. He smashed it out the stain, which is a stone. Stain. It's not a discoloration, it's a stone. Our weary dungeons dark and stern, there will that decay. There's time will be land on yonder gallows tree. Say run to me, say one to me, say done to me, he played his tune and he danced around the old young gallows tree. me hung, some forte me for I will prayer, take his pedal in the bay, though his hands are over the state. So never hand shall play on ye when I am dead. Say randomly, say wantonly, say dantonly, gaily. He's playing his tune as he danced around the gallows tree. Brave was coming the bray of Banff. They said Macpherson free, and they hit the hand of the clock. He hung him frae the tree. Say randomly, say dantonly, say randomly, gaily. He's played his tune and his dance around the gallows tree. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Will.
The funny thing I also got from that website about the McPhersons is that it said that, I don't know if this is true because I never heard it when I was in Scotland. It said that because of this incident, visitors to the town of Banff, which is in Aberdeenshire, are always joking to residents of Banff, saying, "What time is it? Oh, are you sure it's that time? Are you sure your clock is right?" Because according to the story, reprieve was coming. Somebody was sent with a pardon for McPherson. They saw him over the hills coming towards Banff, and the lord of the town who was having him killed said, "Well, he's got to die at 4 o'clock, so we better hurry up about this." So he had somebody go up to the clock tower and push the hand so that it read 4 o'clock, and they hung him right on the spot, so that his reprieve, so that his pardon wouldn't get there.
Just too late.
Yeah.
We'll open for questions now. Those of you here at Robbers Roost, you need to go to the microphone, and John will let us know if there's any from our Facebook viewers.
So, what does it actually mean to be a gypsy?
Well, it's mainly a matter of, well, either family. No, I'm partly descended from them, by this Scottish grandmother.
Sure.
It's different customs than the settled people. In fact, one of the stories that my grandmother told me was that she had an ancestor named Alexander Ross. He was lost at sea, and his wife, when she had confirmed information that her husband was dead, she took everything that he owned and made a big bonfire out of it. They burned all of their things. And in fact, there was a movie called Into the West where, they're not traveler actors, but they, as part of this movie, this guy's wife, he had held off burning his wife's caravan, the Bender tent, the round thing that you think of as a gypsy wagon. So he finally, as an act of letting her go, burned it. So there's different customs that they follow. They have a language that they keep to themselves. They call it shelta, so there's that. They have a way of speaking so that others can't understand them. Mainly used so that they can talk about deals that they're trying to make, suggestions back and forth, how to buy something at a cheaper price than perhaps the seller wants to sell. So that's pretty much what it means. I mean, you're a traveler if you come from a traveler family. You're like cursed with disgrace by everybody else. But there's travelers who came through this town. They would buy blankets from Navajos and they would sell them here. In fact, we may have some of those traveler blankets that were sold here, saddle blankets and things. But yeah, there was gypsies that moved through here all the time.
John, any online comments or questions? Anybody else questions? All right, Katie.
William, will you tell us a little bit about how you started writing music? Kind of what your first song?
Well, yeah, I started writing music. I never really felt as though, I'm not the only musician who says that they don't really write songs. They just kind of catch them out of the atmosphere and then try to refine them. What was that story that, well, you remember it better than me, but some musician had said, I agree that we don't really write the songs. They're just floating out there in the atmosphere. And if you're lucky, you reach out and you grab one. And then he said, but, all of my songs are not very good because Bob Dylan was always in the front of the line and he got him first. Who was that?
Was that Tim?
No, it wasn't Tim O'Brien. I think his writing is better than that. No, it was
I forgot.
Arlo Guthrie. Arlo Guthrie said that about his songwriting, how it wasn't as good as Bob Dylan's. But, and I have to agree.
Yeah.
I think that there's things like that. I think there's riffs out there. Quite honestly, I've thought of riffs and could never make it into a song, and a riff is like a short piece of music that is like a leitmotif, that they call it in classical music, repeated over and over. Like da 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 da. That's a riff. I heard one, I wrote it down, and within a few months, it was on a Rolling Stones song. And like that kind of like made me think that was floating through the atmosphere. I caught it. I couldn't do anything with it. They caught it, and they did something with it. And it was a big hit.
That was your gift.
It's a gift to be able to have like this amorphous antenna out that you hear things. I don't know if it's really true, but it is really weird how maybe it's like collective unconscious. I don't know. So I don't really write songs. I just grab them and try to develop them.
Anybody else? Questions? Oh, good.
What was the first song you grabbed? And is it one that we would know?
It's not one that I do anymore, and it's one that I wrote back at my parents' house, and I wrote it on the upright piano that I used to have until I unwisely told my mother she could sell it. Because, my kids could have learned how to play it. I would have hauled it here. Anyway, I don't remember the song anymore. I'll try and dig it out so you can hear it. But heck, you could have asked me that at home. But I appreciate you asking it in public.
Well, what's next for Will Barclay?
Oh, well, I hope to learn Scots before I die, and hopefully teach it to somebody else. Hope to have a fairly quiet retirement because of my back injury. Well, because of my stonework resulting in my back injury. I've had to have 2 surgeries, and so I don't do that kind of work anymore. And still have to take medicine to stop the tingling in my arms from the surgery that happened here.
So you're going to
So-
relax as much as you can.
As much as I can, yeah.
That's great.
That and watch my granddaughter Amelia, which, like they say, it keeps me young because I have to chase her around the yard. And, you know,
Well, Will, thanks so much. You're a good sport to be here, and I know we all appreciate you.
I love you too.